When Carlini was convulsing Naples with laughter, a patient waited on a physician in that city to obtain some remedy for excessive melancholy, which was rapidly consuming his life. The physician endeavored to cheer his spirits and advised him to go to the theater and see Carlini. He replied, "Of course, I am Carlini." Hey, so this is a warning. This video is going to touch on suicide, self-harm, and other mental health struggles, so please be advised, and if you struggle with any of those, get the fuck out of here! Get out of here! Get on out of here! There are links and numbers for anyone who may be feeling that kind of way in the description. Turn this off if you're struggling with that right now. I love you. I don't care about your views. I care about you. Go away. That anecdote about Carlini was from Letters and Social Aims by Ralph Waldo Emerson. It's often misquoted, with the clown being replaced by Pagliacci, the sad clown. Before the opera begins, a member of the small theatrical road company, Tonio, who looks like a clown, steps before the curtain. He tells the audience that a clown is also a man, so a clown feels sorrow and pity, just like a man. In the latter half of the 19th century, the Calabria in the south of Italy, the small theatrical road company whose manager is Canio, arrived in the village. Canio's wife is the main actress of the company, Netta. She gets sick of her husband because he is deeply jealous. Netta has another man, Silvio. Netta and Silvio promise to elope together. A member of the company, Tonio, overhears this promise, and he informs Canio of it. Canio appears, but Silvio has already run away. Canio is infuriated. He asks his wife, "Who was that?" But Netta refuses to answer. In the meantime, it was time to perform. In the dressing room, Canio wears his stage costume to play the clown, and when he puts the powder on his face, he cries alone. Many villagers gather, and the performance by the company starts. The story is similar to Canio's reality. The woman, who is played by Netta, meets her lover, while her husband, who is played by Canio, is absent. And her husband comes home soon. Canio is out of his senses. In the middle of his play, he strongly asks, "Tell me his name," but his wife refuses to answer. The audience is excited by their realistic acting, and finally Canio stabs Netta to death with a knife. The audience screams in horror. Before her death, Netta cried, "Help me, Silvio!" But Silvio had already disappeared into the audience. Canio runs after him and stabs him too. Canio then turns to the audience and yells, "The comedy has ended." This opera, the Sad Clown Opera, came out in 1892 and invaded and co-opted the story of Carlini through its impact on the cultural zeitgeist. Pagliacci's all over pop culture, even if you don't recognize it. He's in that episode of Seinfeld with Elaine Stalker, who shows up dressed like the clown. That clown's Pagliacci. The show they're seeing, Pagliacci. The class bully, Harold, in Hey Arnold, when they go see Carmen, he does like a little parody. "I'm a big ugly clowno, a big sad ugly clowno." Cesar Romero as the Joker supposedly pulled a lot from Pagliacci, as the character itself is also supposed to. And I'd be remiss not to also mention, even if it is a later episode, the 2005 episode of The Simpsons, The Italian Bob. It's not a good one, where Sideshow Bob does perform the final act of Pagliacci. In 1991, Kent State University student Michael Mould died on U.S. Air Flight 405 before he could finish translating Pagliacci into English for an upcoming comics adaptation. Mark Andreyko finished Mould's translation, and it eventually was published in 1998 by Dark Horse Comics. The Clowns is a beautiful, devastating read, and it is dedicated in memory of Mould. The protagonist in our story was often replaced with Joseph Grimaldi, also known as the King of Clowns, an early 1800s performer, and he earned that title. This is from the blog The London Shoes. Today it is globally acknowledged that Joseph Grimaldi transformed the character role of clown from a bit part player to a leading role star. He was easily the most popular English entertainer of his time, and no other clown has ever achieved his level of fame. His white-faced makeup, his clothing, his comic timing, his acrobatics, his sad, clumsy persona, self-depreciation, his title of Joey, are all styles that are today portrayed by clowns all over the world. Grimaldi's life appears to embody the harsh reality of the sad clown paradox. As performance opportunities and income became sparse in his older age, he fell into financial, medical, and emotional distress. He had attempted teaching and even took a few sparse stage roles. However, his worsening health and breathing problems prevented him from dedicating any real time to these ventures. Grimaldi and his wife unsuccessfully carried out a suicide pact by poison. A few years later, his wife passed in 1934. And then finally, 3 years after that, Grimaldi died alone, drowned in alcohol, debt, and despondency. Incidentally, there are both a Pagliacci's pizza and Grimaldi's pizza. No grok pizza, though, thank fucking God. Because this is grok. Yeah, we're not going to talk about him. It's fine. You don't need to know about grok. Eventually, the collective consciousness confusion was cleared, and Pagliacci emerged as the victor, cementing himself as the story's illegitimate protagonist. The story has become so ubiquitous that the common punchline in itself is often referential to the original punchline, a joke making fun of itself. There's a tweet from Alec Robbins, patient. Hi, doctor. I'm Pagliacci the clown. Doctor. Well, fuck. Now I don't know what the fuck to do. Which is pretty good. That was pretty good. It appears the desire to entertain and the desire to be understood are not inherently one and the same, but they do often coincide. They more than often cancel each other out with a kind of destructive interference. In 1981, Fisher wrote in their book, Pretend the World is Funny Forever, the comedians commonly show to not hold themselves in high regard and that self-depreciating remarks are much more prevalent. In the paper, Humor's Role in the Relation Between Attributional Style and Dysphoria, Hugelschorfer, Kwan, Olson, and Reff write, among men and women, higher levels of affiliative and self-enhancing humor and lower levels of self-defeating humor were each associated with fewer depressive symptoms. It becomes a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy, depression made worse by way of its own coping mechanisms. It would seem the depression and exhaustion that comes from being a comedian apparently is not accidental or circumstantial, but rather self-prescribed, often dosed in milligrams of self-depreciation. Arguably, there is no paradox at all. There is nothing contradictory or counterintuitive about a sad clown. It's in the job description. Comedy has fundamentally, and will perpetually, come from tragedy. There's an old adage, comedy is tragedy plus time, which, yeah, I mean, if you think of it more in the frame of its evolutionary origins, comedy is falsely perceived danger. Realizing that perception was wrong, that it was a misunderstanding, that is the root of comedy. The tragedy of death relieved by time. All comedy stems from this kind of cognitive dissonance. Comedy is set up, provide context and expectation, and punchline, provide the unexpected. This trajectory, this way of thinking, this way of presenting information is often encoded into a comedian's public perception, so much so that they can often fail to be taken seriously at all, because everyone is waiting for a punchline. They can't, despite their best efforts, remove the clown makeup. They're prompting everyone with their presence to expect the unexpected. Chevy Chase in The Invisible Man, where it feels like every scene there's a punchline looming over his shoulder. And it's because, I mean, look at him, it's Chevy Chase. You can't take him seriously as an actor or as a human being. Piece of shit. Jimmy Fallon in Band of Brothers, it feels viscerally wrong. It feels like a skit from his show, so much so that I'm going to add a laugh track and you'll see what I mean.
got any more mortar around, sir? We're real short. I'll try to make another ammo run if I can, but don't count on anything. Panzer Division's about to cut the road south. Looks like you guys are gonna be surrounded.
We're paratroopers, Lieutenant. We're supposed to be surrounded.
Good luck. Thanks.
See? I mean, it wasn't funny, but it was arguably funnier than The Tonight Show. There are some exceptions, of course. It's to every rule. Jim Carrey, tremendous actor. In a 2004 interview with 60 Minutes, he said, "There are peaks, there are valleys. They're all kind of carved and smoothed out, and it feels like a low level of despair you live in. Where you're not getting any answers, but you're living okay. And you can smile at the office, but it's a low level of despair." His foray into serious roles was gradual, with movies like Truman Show, a fucking masterpiece of a film, bridging the comedic dramatic gap, allowing him to gradually remove his bright clown makeup, eventually, apparently, completely. In an interview in 2024, he said, "There's no hint of depression in my life whatsoever. Depression only happens when you don't accept what is and when you are playing a character in life. So when I tried to go back and play Jim Carrey, I got depressed. Now I don't try to do that anymore. Depression is your body saying, fuck you, I don't want to be this character anymore. This avatar that you have created in the world is too much for me." You should think of the word as deep rest. Your body needs to be deep rest. It needs deep rest from the character you've been trying to play. It seems as if Jim has made an intentional leap from the stage altogether, seemingly escaping the sad clown paradox by a complete rejection of performance. Robin Williams, incredibly talented, comedic, dramatic actor, and very, very, very scary the few times he was allowed to do it. You shouldn't have let him do it anymore because it's too scary. Have you seen 1 hour photo? Nuh-uh. You can see that he's pulling from like a real place of darkness in those movies. This is a quote from Robin. "I think the saddest people always try their hardest to make people happy because they know what it's like to feel absolutely worthless, and they don't want anyone else to feel like that." Robin would eventually die by suicide after an intense private battle with Lewy body disease. This is a quote from his son, Zach. There was a focus issue that frustrated him. There were issues associated with how he felt, and also from a neurological perspective, he didn't feel great. There was just more anxiety and depression and just things he was experiencing and talking to me about that made me realize he was very uncomfortable. At least from my lens, what I found was someone who was having challenges performing his craft. And that was really irritating for him. When you're a performer, it goes beyond pride in what you're performing. It's your livelihood. There's 2 more tragic cases I'd like to touch on. The first of which being Chris Farley, my personal childhood hero. And it's the one that always stood out to me. The last 2 movies of his career, not including Dirty Work, where he gets his nose bit off, are Beverly Hills Ninja and Wagons East. That's the John Candy one, Almost Heroes. Almost Heroes was a Christopher Guest comedy, which was supposed to be an ensemble cast picture, like the ones he's most known for. Unfortunately for Chris and the other actors involved, the studio cut the character-driven comedy down to a Farley front-run picture, and in doing so, they kept in all of the kind of lackluster bits that would have been cut and should have been cut, and they sacrificed a lot of screen time for those actors who were expecting to be in a Christopher Guest ensemble. It was reportedly devastating for Farley and a lot of the rest of the actors, as that's not at all what they wanted. Chris wanted to be seen as an equal with comedians who he respected and admired. He didn't want to do another slapstick, fat guy, fall-down comedy, and he was very open about that. He wept on the shoulder of his producer in the bathroom after the premiere of Beverly Hills Ninja. He truly wanted to make something that was not a joke. He wanted it to be funny and have bits, but he wanted to be more of an homage to Sammo Hung and Jackie Chan. He trained apparently very, very hard for months in multiple martial arts disciplines. For this production, he wished to be seen seriously, be taken seriously. And then the cut turned him into a fat guy fall down fart joke yet again. Lorne Michaels said of Chris was an incredibly sensitive kid. No matter what he did, he always had some kind of pride in his work. And so for Chris to do something that empty just didn't feel right for him. Before he passed, he was set to star in a Fatty Arbuckle biopic, a chance for Chris to finally be taken seriously. And I'm not going to talk about his death extensively. Everyone knows what happened. It's been covered thoroughly by a lot of other better YouTubers than me. Eventually, his mental health struggles and substance use coincided. One thing I haven't seen talked about nearly as much is Charlie Rocket. You might know him as the guy who got fired from SNL for saying fuck. He was also the asshole boyfriend in Earth Girls Are Easy and the asshole boss in Dumb and Dumber. There doesn't seem to be a lot of information on Charlie Rocket in terms of depression and if it affected him in any particular way. There aren't a lot of interviews with him at all that I can seem to find. His last live action role was Law & Order Criminal Intent. And then after that, he did some shitty animated movies, some real down in the dumpers. And that was it for him. About a year prior to his death, he and his wife purchased and began restoring a farmhouse in rural Connecticut. And for whatever the reason, Charlie Rocket was found by his tent and workbench in the middle of his newly acquired field. His throat had been slit in what was determined to be a suicide. He was in his 50s. Comedians' struggle with mental health is unfortunately apparently deterministic and difficult to avoid. It comes with the territory. I can't think of a successful comedian who doesn't also have mental health struggles. I'm sure there are some. I feel like a lot of people are like, oh, it comes with the territory. You have to be sad to be funny. And I don't think that's true. I think that when you are funny for a living, it makes it difficult to be happy. Maria Bamford is the funniest comedian of all time. I don't care. I will physically fist fight you, and I have never been in a fist fight. Norm doesn't count. Norm was never a clown. He didn't put on the makeup. Norm wasn't even in the fucking stage. Norm's 3 blocks away laughing at you. He doesn't count. He's an alien. Maria Bamford is the funniest person. The utmost honest comedian. And I feel like the one comedian who has truly broken, or at least inhibited, that depreciation spiral. I feel like that happens because of the nature of her comedy, and the way she's done that is through embracing and exploring her mental health as a major component of her act. Please watch her stand-up. Please read her writings. I truly don't have enough good things to say about Maria Bamford. She is truly, honestly, a prime diamond example of comedy is tragedy plus time. And this whole video is to say that maybe the clown paradox isn't really a paradox. And the nature of the sad clown is actually causal and self-actualized. The nature of a comedian is to entertain. Their dopamine, their enjoyment, everything comes from that entertainment. And when they inevitably fall, because public perception always inevitably wanes, people want new things. The nature of consumerism has cemented the idea that novelty is the necessity now. So as you lose audience, as you sunset in popularity, as you lose access to this immense source of your dopamine, the self-depreciation comes in as a coping mechanism. And then that coping mechanism, without intervention, as shown in that 2006 study, humor's role, this leads to further depression. And that's the spiral. It's not a sad clown paradox. It's seemingly, unfortunately, the sad clown paradigm that few and far between have been able to escape. And I'd like to end this rant with a quote from Robin Williams in Dead Poets Society. Please don't worry so much. because in the end, none of us have very long on this earth. Life is fleeting, and if you're ever distressed, cast your eyes to the summer sky when the stars are strung across the velvety night. And when a shooting star streaks through the blackness, turning night into day, make a wish and think of me. Make your life spectacular. I love you. If you're struggling at all, please talk to somebody. I love you. Bye-bye.